Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. Hope everyone is having a great day wherever in the world you happen to be. And as you know, in this channel, sometimes we go into the UFO areas. And one of the more interesting, one of the crazier topics in that genre is the concept that there may be a quote, a fake UFO invasion that will occur for various reasons. At some point in the near future, and it's a concept that certainly I never took seriously. I first heard about it through Stephen Greer's work a number of years ago because he was being tipped off by alleged insiders in high, above top secret levels of government that this was a plan that was on the books, and he's been a steadfast opponent of this concept, and it's been motivating him with many of his work, including films like Serious Disclosure, Unacknowledged, and the more recent film, which was Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which I do recommend watching. It's a very good film. They're all very good films, especially for people on the fence about higher dimensional contact, ET contact, whatever you want to call it. But another person on the radar who came on my radar is Randy Cramer. I actually made a video about this sometime last year, talking about why this fake UFO invasion concept is such a bad idea, and I was citing Randy Cramer. I may have been citing this very video, but I'm revisiting it because I think that there is some legitimate reasons to consider this now as a possibility, more so than before, more so than 3 months ago, more so than 6 months ago, more so than a year ago, that this is something that is in the realm of possibilities. And I'm going to explain why, and again reference some things that Randy Cramer has said, and how that's even affected some of my own plans, because I was very surprised by certain concepts or certain predictions that Cramer has now gotten spot on. And in these kind of metaphysical, esoteric areas, it's not so common that people get prophecies and predictions correct, right? Because there's a lot of fake people out there. There's a lot of fake prophecies, or there's a lot of experiences people have trying to make predictions about things only to find that they were being given wrong information, or it was maybe at best a glimpse into a parallel timeline that never happened. So it does catch my attention when somebody comes along who is able to accurately say things before they happened, and this is the case with this individual named Randy Cramer. And so I'm going to go into what he said and why that raises alarm bells for me, and maybe something we should just think about a little bit in the, I think, very small chance something like this really happens. We're going to explore why this strategy may unfold, and also, of course, what I think about that these days. Before we go further, though, you are watching Afterlife Topics. We talk usually about metaphysical concepts, life beyond the grave, where we go, our purpose in life, metaphysical elements of reality, a lot of stuff like that. We have many videos stretching back now a couple of years and hundreds of videos. All of these videos are their own topics, their own concepts, their own discussions that you can get involved with at any time by going through the archives of videos. But you can really help the channel out by hitting that subscribe button. And if you really want to get involved, work with me, then I suggest to get involved as a patron over at the Patreon page, which is in the description down below, patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Okay, so to continue. So Randy Cramer, when I was first introduced to him, my impression was that here's a guy who maybe is suffering from schizophrenia. He claims that he is working for I guess what we could call a deep state military industrial complex intelligence wing, in this case centered around the United States Marine Corps. Now, if you follow this kind of weird exopolitical landscape, there's the concept, the idea is that there's many factions of what we may call a shadow government, and oftentimes they're at odds with each other. The CIA might be at odds with the NSA, and The governments of world powers have their own shadow governments, which may be at odds with other shadow governments. And insiders from these different areas sort of confirm these concepts that things are not black and white. There's not a clear, distinct good guys, bad guys. So the very same people that Stephen Greer was tipped off by, who said that in the works was a plan to literally fake a UFO attack, Cramer claims to be working for. So Cramer claims that he's literally the PR guy for these people. Cramer also claims to have existed on a parallel timeline using advanced ET technology where his life was split in two. Many people make this claim, and he had a separate life basically working off planet, including to a military capacity, living for a while on the planet Mars, and also living for a while with an ET civilization in the Cassiopeia system, or I believe is that I think that's in our galaxy, right? So the Cassiopeia system, that he was stationed there and fell in love with a woman who was very, very human looking, and that it's a very similar civilization. And he has a lot of stories about that, which I may highlight in the future because he has a lot of really interesting things to say about this, like other insiders in the exopolitical angle who make claims like this. He seems very sincere. It doesn't, if you just have good at body language and you're good at telling when people are liars, which I think I'm pretty good at from growing up with my father, I guess, it seems like he believes what he's saying. And there's a lot of very interesting things that he talks about in that area. But just using my logical thinking, my first impression when he says he's literally hearing voices, that he's tapped in psionically to his commanding officers who are able to just speak directly into his mind. My thought is schizophrenia, or maybe a mischievous otherworldly entity, which sometimes masquerades itself as what people diagnose as schizophrenia, and that's a different subject. So when did I start taking Cramer quite seriously? The answer was when he began making very accurate predictions. So I'm going to play a clip from the Alien Expo in Canada from 2019. So here he is summarizing pretty well the current state of affairs in the USA as it is in late June 2020. And this is back in, I think, like October or November of 2019. Now, it's not like a clear-cut prediction, but we'll get to that part after this. This was back in like October, November. So let's take a listen.
Because most Americans don't understand what's happening in the American political system, okay? But for people who are paying attention, Civil War 2.0 is brewing, hot and heavy, okay? And there are foreign intelligence agencies from other countries who are fueling those people with propaganda information, money, intelligence, and in some cases, money for weaponry. Does this sound familiar? Have we ever done this as Americans? Us. I mean, have we ever gone into other countries and divided up the sides and armed them both and got them fighting against each other and caused destabilization? Okay, we've done that. So guess what? It's happening here. Sorry, there. All right? I mean, sorry, you're our next door neighbor, and you're as enwrapped in this with us as anybody else could possibly be. So, you're in it whether you want to be or not. But this is what's happening here. We're seeing this incredible amount of propaganda, confusing people, dividing people. People on the right think the left is absolutely want to start a civil war, and the people on the left are concerned the right absolutely wants to start a civil war, and they both better start it first before the other one does. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, people are not listening to this? But this is not just happening here, there. It's happening all over. Because there is a shifting in balance of power. And anytime there's a shifting in balance of power, there's an opportunity for those to kick out the table leg from someone else so that they can get a few feet ahead. So there are people who certainly don't hate us, but really know that it will benefit them if we fall down and break an ankle. Because it changes the fluxing, shifting of power, changes the balance of power in a way that serves other people, other countries, other interests. So we very, very much would like to avoid a civil war. Anyone who thinks that a civil war would be awesome, let me just refer you to the previous one. Historically, if you don't know about it, read up on it. It was awful. It was terrible. It was horrible. Many people died. We talk about brother fighting brother, killing brother, because that's what was happening. Families were divided across the Mason-Dixon line, and they shot and killed each other. It was horrible. We don't want that to happen again, for so many reasons. Now, we understand that in the attempt to communicate to people to try and straighten them out, it's not working. Okay? I run into people all day long who come to me and say, oh, Randy, don't you think that this and that, and they want to basically have their own belief system reinforced because of confirmation bias. They don't want the truth. They want what they believe to be reinforced. And if I tell them that what they believe isn't true, then cognitive dissonance kicks in, and then I must not be real or true or telling the truth because I'm disagreeing with what this person wants to believe. True story. A couple weeks ago, I was...
Okay, so I'll pause there. So that was back like October 2019, and if that isn't the best summary of what's happening in the USA right now, I don't know what is. I think people with a brain are looking at the current civil unrest, and it's so obvious with, bricks being laid out for protesters to throw and lots of weird stuff happening, that there's foreign powers, Russia, whomever it may be, China, who are more than happy to try to send the USA based kind of, exploiting what I think is a general inability for Americans sometimes to practice critical thinking or to understand that they're being manipulated, to manipulate them into conditions going toward a civil war, to, as Cramer says, knock America down a peg. Doesn't mean they hate us, just means if we break a foot and we're knocked down, then it gives them the opportunity to rise up. But as Randy also says, the long-term repercussions of this are severe because that strategy being imposed by other governments against our country could escalate to a point where it's a really, really bad conflict with thousands, if not millions, crossing over. And that's a big problem. What is the solution to that, according to the military shadow government? Maybe to quickly and effectively reunify everybody back together. So, when did I start taking this seriously? So I've been listening to this, kind of keeping in the back of my mind. 2020 began. 2020 was also, as I predicted, crazy roller coaster with the great pandemic, which appears to have no real end. Well, it seems to be fizzling out in Europe. Pretty stabilized there, but in many other parts of the world, the great pandemic is still ongoing, even in late June. So that hit and ended globalized civilization basically as we know it. You can really, there's no free easy air travel now anywhere on the planet, so the whole world is completely turned upside down. Cramer began having interviews with other people. I think one in particular was Laura Eisenhower, so you can check this interview out on YouTube. And Cramer, in that interview, this was in late March, now, he's kind of accommodating the pandemic and saying, this is actually the first plan of the disclosure process was this pandemic. We knew it was going to happen, and this is, what we were ready for. And then the next stage of something that's about to happen is mass civil unrest in the USA. So that's what we're expecting to begin happening next. And so I heard this, and that actually steadied my hand from making plans to go straight back to the USA from the Philippines. Now, I shouldn't be making life-changing plans around fringe speakers like this guy, but something about it was sticking in my mind. This was March 30th. Not that long after that, we all know what happened. He predicted it down to the wire. Cramer very specifically said civil unrest was about to happen, and then it happened. That is something that we should all pause and think about. So, how was he able to make that prediction correctly? How did he know that we were on the cusp of that happening? He said, that the pandemic is just the beginning, and to hold on to your seats because things are going to get crazier and crazier and crazier. And he was talking about how things are going to get crazier and crazier and crazier in this coming year, in 2020, again, back in this speech from 2019. So let's actually take a listen. So this next clip is maybe about 4 or 5 minutes long, but pretty interesting stuff being mentioned, and also talking about how this fake UFO invasion will be rolled out. So let's take a listen, starting here.
Go either way still.
Well, actually, let me back up a little bit.
Okay. What's the word I'm thinking of there? The other word that comes after that. You have essentially something that's considered an urgent threat. And something that's an urgent threat, you can't just spend the next 12 months investigating. You have to do something about it right now. So when you have an urgent threat, then all of that stuff that we have that we're keeping a secret, we can convince and force, strong-arm people to give to us in such a way that we need them. Through urgent, desperate life or death need. Now, this could go either way still.
And he's referring to, so he claims he's working for the U.S. Marine Corps. He claims that one of the proofs that he's real is the fact that impersonating a member of the U.S. military is stolen valor. It's a federal offense, and that he would, in any other situation, if he was just a normal guy making these claims, then he would be arrested by now. He says he will not be arrested because he really does work for a secret division of the U.S. Marine Corps. So that's what he claims. He claims that this is part of the think tank that's organizing this fake UFO invasion plan, and that they're split between doing a hostile UFO disclosure or a peaceful, land on the White House lawn, take me to your leader type of event. And the vote currently is in favor of the hostile one as a unifying factor that's going to mitigate the threat of civil war. It's going to stop the civil unrest in the USA and stop what he's also predicting to be a foreign hostile threat, such as China or Russia, which he believes that we'll be engaged with some kind of actual combat with before the end of the year. That's another prediction, and we get to see if that pans out. So he says it could go either direction, hostile or peaceful.
Okay. Just because a decision has been made that we're very likely heading that direction, at some point someone could decide, oh, you know what, we're going, change our mind, we're going this way. It could happen. So if it turns out I'm not right, I totally disqualify any notion that I'm telling you this is absolutely positively 1,000,000% the way it's absolutely going to be, because I can't do that. That's not my job. I can tell you, based on the information that I've been given, we are at a high percentage point of agreement by those who get to decide that that is the direction we are going at this time. That's not the same thing as saying it's happening regardless. You follow me on that? So, and the only reason that I think that it matters for me to even tell you that is just so that you're not caught with your pants around your ankles, okay? We would prefer that people are not shocked and surprised, because shock and surprise creates fear. Fear creates thought waves which create and bend matter and energy and create a fear-based reality in which bad things will occur. So the less people are afraid, the less likely that the creation of an outcome of terrible, horrible consequences will occur.
Shared reality model of the universe based on thought. Really interesting subject. Would love to talk more about this. Again, Cramer has a lot of, in my opinion, insightful things to talk about. Whether or not he's really what he says he is, and I don't know. But there's a possibility, and if there's just a possibility, it's reason enough to take this stuff seriously.
It is true that if people are thinking better thoughts about the reality they live in, it will turn out better. That is how our brains work and how our quantum entanglement computer works, and our ability to bend matter and energy around us, especially collectively as a group. Oh, anything that they have that they make better or that we have shortages of. That's the whole point of trade. There's somebody out there that has more cadmium than we've ever seen and can get it to us for pennies on the dollar of what we can mine it for. And we'd rather trade someone something for that than spend $1.25 to mine it out of an asteroid somewhere when we can spend 10 cents on the dollar to trade with it for somebody. Right. Right. The question is environmental degradation and oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
We wait for the questions until he's finished, and then we'll.
And I'm going to finish right here, and then we'll get to some questions. We'll take a little bit of time. So, more importantly, what I hope that you take away is that how you think about your reality makes a bigger difference than you think about the world has an impact on you. You have an impact on your reality in a bigger way than you imagine that it does. And so whatever the future holds, your ability to understand yourself as a creative tool, as a creative being, is more important than anything else I can tell you, any other advice I can give you, building a bunker in the ground or anything like that. The most valuable thing that you can have and understand is that your ability to form and create your reality is the most important thing in how whatever is going to happen goes for you personally. That's, I think, the most important thing that I would like people to take away. The second thing is, if what I say starts to happen, and here's how you'll know. So, if any of you have been paying attention a little bit to what's happening in the world, and it seems like it's getting crazier and crazier and crazier.
Keep in mind, this is from 2019. Before anything was really crazy, I think the world was pretty stabilized back then, if you'd ask me.
Yeah, it is. Expect that it's going to get nuttier and crazier and crazier. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, oh, it will. And then when you think, oh, that's totally the top, nope, it's going to get crazier. And when you think, okay, this has got to be the maximum level of crazy that we can have in this world right now, nope, it's going to get crazier. Then, when it is truly the craziest that anybody could have possibly imagined it to get, that's when it will happen. And you're going to continue to see these steps that other people have spoken about as far as members of the military and the government, throwing out these little test balloons and seeing what people, we used to say, send up the flagpole and see who salutes at it, right? So they're throwing this information out, trying to get a response, trying to get a reaction, so that when something occurs, everyone's not surprised. So that more than not, people go, oh, I knew that was going to happen. See, I knew that was totally going to happen, right? That's what we want. We want people prepared, not shocked. Because it's the shock that will make people go crazy.
Okay. This was from the channel Near Death Experiment. I don't know if maybe it's a NDE related channel posting this video up. I don't know much about them. You can always subscribe to them, though. I always like to tell people to subscribe to the channels if I link one from here. But anyway, so that was the Randy Cramer presentation I'm referencing. And again, there's other presentations which I don't have time to put up on YouTube at the moment, where more of this information gets revealed. And he basically talks about, like, if this plan were to happen, we'd be looking at a 1 or 2 month process, which could involve up to maybe like 1 million people losing their lives, which I think would make his faction of the government into murderers if they decide to do this. I mean, just to be frank, it would make them into killers to do something like that. But that's what he said would probably happen. So it'd be 1 or 2 months. He doesn't think that the supply chains would be completely badly affected. He just thinks you shouldn't be in major metropolitan areas, or you may have, more problems. Personally, I think that when it comes to people thinking it's doomsday and jumping out of buildings and all of the things that he's afraid, or his group says are afraid, would happen if the peaceful ET landing happened, I think this would happen, triple-fold if the aggressive ET invasion happened. So anyway, so it would last for 1 or 2 months, and then a different faction of also ETs, who are also our friends, just playing a role, would come and then chase away the, quote, bad guy ETs. And then after that, all of the world would be unified around these, bad ETs that were so terrible, and global wars would end. The threats of the Civil War in the USA would be rectified. Threats between countries would end. And basically, everybody would be unified all over the world around this one enemy, because that's the only way to appeal to our lizard/monkey brains. The only way for us to, the only way to get through to humanity, unfortunately, appears to be doing something like this. That's the only way to kind of reliably unify people together. So then once this happens, it will open up what he calls like 10,000 years of prosperity at least. So you'll have trade between so many different species. We'll have access to technology and medicine and things that we could never dream of before, and life on Earth would get much, 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 much better than it is right now. All that stuff is just bubbling at the seam, bubbling at the edges. It's just waiting to burst forth. And this is the way that he claims that his group wants to roll it out. But what's another final reason to take this seriously? Because the news headlines are also lining up with this happening. Hope you're still thank you for still watching the video up to this point. I kind of wanted to tell people ahead of time to stay till the end, because I had some interesting stuff I wanted to share at this point. So thank you for staying on with this video and watching this long. I wanted to highlight this article here at CBS News. Senators want public to see Pentagon UFO reports citing inconsistent information sharing. So real quick, what's going on here? And this is a new article from just a couple days ago. They want a report on the current status of UFO visitation coming out to the public via the Pentagon by the end of the year. This is official stuff going on. But look again how they're framing it. So the program, managed by the Office of Naval Intelligence, is responsible for the collection and reporting on unidentified aerial phenomenon, any links they have to adversarial foreign governments, and the threat they pose to U.S. military assets and installations. So it's the framing of ETs and UFOs as a threat. So we've been seeing that really getting pushed since 2017. UATs, unidentified aerial threats, they were calling them for a while. So they're revealing UFOs are real, they're confirming they're real, and they're framing them as threats. So that is something that really lines up with what Cramer is talking about. Basically, if you go into To the Stars Academy stuff, the Luis Elizondo guy who was all over the news the last couple of years talking about the unidentified aerial threats, and that he left the official organization because of the red tape and he wanted to come out to the public and all of that. I mean, again, I tell you before, I think I'm pretty good at telling people are lying. And the Luis Elizondo guy, that guy is, that guy has Pinocchio written on his face. I think the guy is definitely not being forthright with people. There's just something off about the guy, and his story, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense that he left this 8-tip program voluntarily. Why should we believe he actually left that program just to work in the private sector? It's very obvious that To the Stars Academy is still part of naval intelligence and still part of the government, and it's a information operation, and they're rolling out the UFO information on what appears to be a very specific timeline of events. And it's almost like when you look at the news headlines about this, it's like it really just seems so scripted. It's like I can imagine a clipboard somewhere with check marks. Okay, we're going to do this week. Okay, next month we're going to release this. Okay, we're going to have the Pentagon admit these videos were real. Check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark. And now we have a public report on the UFO threats by the end of the year. Check mark. So why would there be a public report on UFO threats? Well, let's say this goes public and it's all over the news. Now it's on everybody's mind. Hey, those UFOs, they're real and they're a threat. Now, just as Randy Cramer was talking about, people will be a little bit less panicked and freaked out once it happens. Once all these so-called UAPs decide to start launching attacks on our military systems. which, according to Cramer, that's the next step. So Cramer's timeline roughly has, okay, so we have the pandemic. We don't really know, of course, where this came from, but it seems like, his intelligence sector was able to predict it was going to happen. And then they also predicted that there's going to be this civil war or / civil unrest that's going to sweep the states. It's going to lead to foreign governments taking advantage of that, possibly having armed military conflict with those foreign governments. Things are going to get worse and worse on these fronts. And then at some point, these UAPs, the stuff that's in the news, all this, this timeline that we see being rolled out, it's going to come to a head. And again, when you look at these news stories, these official disclosure stories, it's really a new thing. Here we have up on the screen, the famous video of the UAP that was filmed over the USS Nimitz. I believe that's the correct video. This timeline is going to come to its obvious conclusion. And that conclusion is going to be these so-called threats are actually going to start attacking us. And then that is, of course, it's going to cause widespread panic. But the more that they can prep us that, oh, these are a threat, they're going to attack, they're going to attack, they're going to attack, the more prepared people will be. And it also helps that this convenient pandemic happened where everybody became conditioned and able to, learn how to go into their homes, not leave their houses, and stay put. So it's very convenient in a way that this happened. So this will come to an obvious conclusion at some point in the midst of, I think, a really high level of crisis and turmoil in the States, when these UAPs will turn aggressive, they'll turn hostile, and it will be recognized that they are not of the earth. And this is going to kick our butts for a couple of months, according to Cramer. And then the friendly ETs are going to come and chase them away. And then that's going to be it for the UFO invasion. And then we'll be looking at like record prosperity and technology releases and basically everything that we're all hoping for, like the new age of prosperity and the new age of this civilization in a very, very positive way. But unfortunately, it's being orchestrated and plotted, developed by these shadow government groups, of which there is a mixture of, good apples and bad apples. But the overall goal, of course, is for humanity to succeed. I think even the bad apples want humanity to succeed. It's part of a selfish interest as well. If you can open up trade routes with ET civilizations, you could be making trillions of dollars. It's unbelievable. The new technologies, you could be making trillions of dollars. So, especially when money is on the table, just like Cramer talked about in that lecture, when powers realize that this strategy will not only benefit humanity, but directly benefit them and make them lots and lots of money and power, then they sign off to some form of disclosure happening. Unfortunately, the peaceful disclosure may not happen. Instead, we're looking at the attack of the UAPs, which I think that there's a chance that this could happen. And honestly, it's going to suck, and I think a lot of people will lose their lives because we have psychopaths cooking up these plans. But the end result would be really, really positive. And if it happens, just remember what you saw on this obscure little YouTube channel about it, and do like you've been doing already. Shelter at home, have some canned food, and have some extra water, and hang out for a couple of months until it blows over. And then celebrate when it's done, because I think there will be a lot to celebrate when it's over. Sorry, there's like this weird noise coming from my window, like a squeaking sound. I thought that there was like a chipmunk out here, but I'm in the Philippines, so probably there's no chipmunk. Anyway, wow, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informative. If you like this, be sure to share it. You can get involved at afterlifetopics.com. Pick up one of my books like Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond. All cheap on Amazon. Work with me one-on-one, do some consultations, coaching, astral projection training. I offer all of that. Just contact me down below at the info box down below, the channel description. And I guess that's it. I will see you guys soon on the next video.